Hi, my name is Paul Shearer. I'm the CTO of Denovo, and I have with me today the CEO of eFlux. Ali, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, good to be here. It's Ali Nassim, CEO of eFlux. Happy to join you, Paul.
So, kind of just a little bit about myself and my background. I've been in kind of the intersection of JD Edwards and hyperscale cloud for really most of my career, or at least since hyperscale cloud was a thing, and just kind of really focused on how to maximize companies' ROI on their existing investments, both in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of JD Edwards, the ERP system of record, and just how to maximize that. Ali, you want to talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm always been that combination of left brain and right brain. And I've been a big proponent of leading with the experience, right? So experience management and how you can bring awesome experiences into the enterprise space has always been my passion. And then that over the years kind of led me into this whole idea of innovating with a lot of agility, because I always feel that experience layer is where you innovate the most. And that ultimately brought into this whole paradigm of no code and automation that we've been talking about today.
Can you go to the next slide, Ali? Okay, so our agenda for today, welcomes and introductions, which we just did. Thank you all for attending. Overview of our companies, and then we're going to talk about technical debt in JD Edwards, and specifically why I'm so excited about the Swift product from eFlux. So Denovo, we have been around for quite some time within the JD Edwards ecosystem. We're one of the very first managed services provider, and using products like Swift from eFlux and others, we really position ourselves as being that next generation managed services provider. So it's not about just your ERP system and keeping it up. It's how do you leverage the maximum amount of value? How do you take that value and turn that into a competitive advantage for you? Something that differentiates you and your company from your competitors. And that's just an area that we're laser focused on. So, we want to be that all-in-one partner. And when we say all-in-one, if it's Oracle, it's us. So, kind of some areas that we focus on, primarily kind of that managed services experience, which is really kind of that day-to-day care and feeding of the system, but also what I was talking about before. How do we maximize the value that you're getting out of that ROI? How do we make it differentiated for you? So Ali, over to you.
Thanks, Paul. So yeah, so we at eFlux are all about innovation and agility, right? So this is our mission, to bring innovation and agility to every enterprise. And we strongly feel unless you can have both together, a real innovation really doesn't happen. If it happens in a more of a waterfall way or in a bureaucratic way. And that's what we feel creates the most positive impact within the enterprise. What that really means from a JD Edwards standpoint, we work with multiple ERPs, but from a JD Edwards standpoint, what that means is we've always been an outsider innovation partner, right? So we always have looked JD Edwards from the outside in. What that has meant is creating alternate user experiences, doing mobility, doing IoT and AI stuff for some time now, and then looking at it, like I said, from the outside in, and essentially what we do is bridge the gap between the customer journeys and the core business processes that you have in the ERP. So for some of the work we've done, we've been referenced at Gartner, we've been published at Stanford for some of very cutting edge stuff that we did with JD Edwards customers. We were the early adopters for the orchestrator, for AIS. Um, so that's quickly what we've been up to. Over to you, Paul.
Yeah, you know that low code, no code stuff. As somewhat of a developer myself, that's almost offensive. It's like you're trying to simplify this down to where this highly specialized skill set's not required. It's a little tongue in cheek, and we'll get more into that later. But this is really one of the exciting parts of the project. But the purpose of this webinar, though, is specifically to talk about low code, no code through a CTO lens, and why personally this is important to me, and why this also ought to be important to all of you that are attending for your organization. It'll certainly be something that's very important to your CISO as you're thinking about things through a security context. But one of the big struggles within JD Edwards, and this really goes back decades, is how do you give your company a competitive advantage? How do you differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack, but at the same time balance the technical debt that you're going to be incurring? So the reason most customers customize JD Edwards is not because they just like doing development, not because they're particularly fond of their C++ programmer. They're modifying JD Edwards because if they tweak that out of the box functionality, they're believing that they're giving themselves a competitive advantage. And in a lot of cases, initially, that really is true. So you take somebody that, let's say 20 years ago, they were implementing XE, and they went and they modified sales order entry. And they modified sales order entry in a way that they believed gave them a competitive advantage. When they went live on that functionality, that was probably a true statement. They had a competitive advantage. But over time, they lost that competitive advantage. And the reason is Oracle continued to innovate, continued to iterate over time on that application and on other applications. And because of that legacy customization that they did, that company was not able to keep current. So they started lagging further and further behind compared to their competitors. So what was originally this really compelling competitive advantage they had, at the end of the day became technical debt that was holding them back in actually making them lose ground and becoming a competitive disadvantage for companies. So a lot of organizations are really facing the challenge of, how do I keep repeatedly investing in redeveloping and re-implementing these customizations while keeping current, or just accepting the fact that they've got that massive amount of technical debt. So Ali, I see you've got this slide up right now, kind of the dragon of technical debt. And there on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side, this is all mirrored for me. The side that says security patches, whatever side that happens to be for you. That's a thing that I really am focused on, and I'm obsessed about. So companies that are on these legacy systems. So, maybe you're still running XE. I hope not, but maybe you are. Or maybe you're 8.10, 8.11, 9.1, and you really haven't been able to upgrade because of that scenario I was talking about before. You're this highly customized environment, and it's just too expensive for you to do this on a frequent basis. What that means is that today you're running out of support operating systems, you're running out of support database, And probably most importantly, you're running out of support WebLogic. So your Java stack, your J2EE stack is got massive amounts of vulnerabilities. So this means that not only from a business agility standpoint, you're not taking advantage of all the cumulative investments that Oracle's made in the product over the last few decades, but you're also opening your company up. You're exposing yourself to ransomware attacks, to literally all a adversary is looking for is a toehold into your system. That once they get that, they can start expanding horizontally throughout it and exfiltrating your data, giving it potentially to your competitors in their local market, or ransomware attacks where they're going in, they're encrypting your system, they're locking it down, and in which case you're really screwed. Ali, can you talk a little bit about what Swift does and how it works, and how it really solves and resolves this tension between agility, uh, competitive differentiation, and not creating this technical debt that I'm so obsessed about.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you made there, right? Because the same thing that was a competitive advantage, which is your customizations, uh, what tends to happen with those is not just these customizations happen on the ERP side, but they actually get spread across the whole architecture. But that really means that you have to keep that custom logic updated throughout your different applications, right? Maybe you're creating a web application or a mobile app, maybe using some third-party SaaS applications, and you configuring them and customizing them and integrating them back to JD Edwards. So as you can see in this diagram, this custom logic kind of gets spread out, which means the technical debt is spreading out, right? So it's not one place that it is, and you can really solve that problem, right? So that's basically what the conventional enterprise apps integration has been all about. I mean, I know we've had like BPM, when itself has sort of become over and over customized with the different business processes that you put there. Do you want to I think you already highlighted this WebLogic update, right? Where if something gets found in October, it gets discovered in October, gets exploited in December. So that's the time window we're talking about from a security.
Yeah, and that, so from a CTO standpoint, so this is the stuff that keeps me awake at night. So you're on an older version of JD Edwards. Oracle has just come out with their quarterly security updates, and you've got a CVE, which has a score of 9 or 10. So that means an unauthenticated connection to that server can exploit and own the server. It's like the top tier of risk. And literally, we see these a couple times a year on the WebLogic stack. There's always patches around them. And this is from a security presentation I did a couple years ago. But literally, a CVE was announced in October, and within December, it was being exploited in the wild. Think about that timeline. And especially if you have any portion of your JD Edwards environment exposed to the public internet, this is a very, very real risk. You need to be aware of this. And this is one of the most important reasons, at least from my standpoint. I understand there's the whole business value. There's a lot of stuff to be had from the business side, but from a security lens, from a risk standpoint, it's one of the reasons it's so vital to keep your systems current, is just the amount of time from exploit being discovered to exploit being taken advantage of in the wild is just remarkably short.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons you want to be laser focused on this.
Yeah. Great point there. So you've already heard enough about the security risk, right? Having customization and not upgrading. Now let's talk about the innovation equation, right? And typically what happens, your innovation and your security, they kind of normally are not friends with each other, right? Because you have to be secure, you move slower in terms of innovation. What that ends up doing And that technical debt is not just an enemy of security, it's also an enemy of innovation. So this whole idea that I was just having a very interesting discussion with one of the CIOs uh, of our customer company, and they brought up this point that how the salmon run of innovation, start of the year, you have 100 ideas you want to implement. By the end of the year, you're left with maybe one or two that actually get implemented. And the reason for that is, again, the same issue, the technical debt. So this whole notion of software development lifecycle that we've known for decades, in today's day and age, is starting to become and feel more like a debt cycle, where technical debt stifles you, especially your innovation, and kills most of those ideas that are going to give you that competitive advantage. So let's keep those two equations in mind, the security as well as the innovation, right? And like I said, typically they've been at odds with each other. Let's find out how you can actually solve for both together. So going
So from
back to this technical debt, yeah, Paul, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say kind of the idea of the technical debt. I mean, debt is the right term. You think of it like a credit card. When you go and you do that customization initially, it's like you've gone out and you've spent all this money, you've got all this stuff coming in, and you're really happy. Eventually, you got to pay for it.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people try paying for it using another credit card, more debt, and then maybe another credit card that they're refinancing, and the whole thing just keeps snowballing.
Absolutely.
And so you know, there's got to be a way out of this vicious debt cycle, and I think
Exactly.
that's what
This
you're
is
about
like
to talk
discussed.
about.
This is that, this web where you get stuck and stuck and stuck. Now, it has to be a better way, right? So the better way is the no code enterprise automation way. And that's what we're going to be focusing for the next 35 to 40 minutes on. So instead of having all the customizations in your system of record, if your differentiation, if you really think about that, your system of record or your ERP is never going to be your differentiator. The differentiator is going to be your competitive advantage is going to come from the system of engagement and the experience layer, your front end self-service portals, your mobile apps, even for your internal customers, your end, like if you have scanning guns and how quick and efficient those are in terms of actually getting the work done. So if you think about that, the customizations and differentiated experiences, if they can be pulled out from your system of record, and the good news is that JD Edwards, since 2015, when they first launched AIS, and then the orchestrator, a lot of that is possible in a very nice way, which is you can actually expose any and everything that you can do in your JD Edwards can be exposed as a REST service. So utilizing that on top of an orchestration layer, and then topping it off with a no-code automation layer, you get a very strong advantage. So let's talk about it a little, right? And let's compare those two, Paul. Some of the
Before we get a
challenges.
little bit in, before we get a little bit into the details, just to kind of bring it up a bit later, can you go back to that previous slide, Ali, that you were just looking at? So what you're talking about here is all the customization that you used to have in JD Edwards, just moving it outside of JD Edwards and doing it in another product. And that way, when you're doing your upgrade for JD Edwards, it's all vanilla. You're not changing anything. You can very easily take those updates. And then because your product is already aware of JD Edwards, it understands that context. There is no real retrofit that you need to do for it.
Yes, and the magic is in the metadata, right? The metadata level inheritance of the business logic, and that's what we're going to be digging in further. So let's compare the two, right? Let's compare how things have been done so far and what the challenges are with that. Technical debt, I think we've already highlighted there. The business logic silos, right? So your business logic gets spread thin across the whole architecture, and if something needs to be updated, you end up updating all the systems, and then making sure they're all in sync. Another side effect, the data silo. So talking about security and having data available at different spots that we have to plug in and secure also becomes a nightmare, right? So and you know what, while you're doing all of that, you have to have uh, cumbersome development cycle. So you're actually making a lot of effort to do something that's not going to benefit you. And in doing so, you need multiple skills, right? If you have mobile applications, you have web applications, you have integration interfaces, you have JD AdWords custom stuff that you've been doing. You have multiple skill sets, and you're getting all those different types of people together to execute on a single project. You know how that goes, right? Then you have to support multiple devices, right? Then you have to make sure that the app works everywhere, and then any change that has to happen either on the business logic or the user experience, you have to make sure all the devices are supported. And then obviously the ongoing maintenance cycle, you're spending more and more money to dig deeper and deeper hole of that technical debt. So now let's compare that, Paul, with this whole approach of no-code enterprise automation, right? And we'll talk about some of these points here, but more so during the demo as well. I'll try to demonstrate that as you try to kill the technical debt, automatically you reduce the level of effort by inheriting all the business logic from your ERP, and how that metadata-based no-code automation becomes such a game changer there. And not just your business logic, your security. So all those Swiftest, SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, SOX compliant, and all that. But the beauty of it is that by default, you get all your JD AdWords security inherited. So there's no different sort of security silo being created. All the data comes in real time, goes back in real time. So the system of record remains the source of truth that stays your mothership, that stays your pristine data source. And what I mean by true no-code, because if you think about that, no-code has been around again for 2 decades, right? Visual Foxtrot was a no-code, low-code tool, or a Visual Basic was a low-code, no-code tool in a sense. The problem was they were all targeted towards developers. What we mean by true no-code is, we'll see in the demo how just using the functional knowledge of a business analyst, of even a power user or a functional consultant, you can build these applications. And who else understands the metadata better than the business analysts or the power users?
So what you're saying is, instead of going out and hiring a really expensive developer and then bringing them in and then spending a bunch of time trying to teach them the business process, you take the person that already knows that business process best, give them a couple hours of training on Swift, and then they're ready to go.
Yes, absolutely. And just imagine a business analyst creating mobile apps, web apps, scanner apps, all integrated, inherited with business logic they have. Maybe you've customized over years and decades, all of them inherited, and then building on top of it. So let's, and with the minimum maintenance, we'll also talk about that. But let's take a visual of, from an architecture standpoint, where Swift comes into the mix of what you already might be sitting on top of. So you have the core JD AdWords module, right?
And at this point, we're keeping it clean. It's pristine. We're not customizing it.
Yep. Then you have this AIS layer, which is a REST engine on top of your JD AdWords.
And this is where you were talking about before. It's expose anything that you can do as a user through the GUI. You can also do programmatically through this layer.
Yeah. And then on top of it is the business process automation layer, or the orchestrator as we've known it and loved for years. So which basically kind of becomes a wrapper on top of AIS so that you can have those workflows done in a no-code fashion. But what's really sitting on top of all this is this no-code enterprise automation layer, which is Swift, which can directly call any of your forms through AIS form services. You can call any of your orchestrations. You don't even need to write new orchestrations. You can directly call the AIS form services, or if you have orchestrations, or you can build new ones and you can call them and convert them. So just hear me out. Converting your existing forms, your existing orchestrations into fully functional mobile tablet scanner apps in a matter of an hour. That's what we're talking about here.
And so this is the layer, I was going to say, this is the layer, at least within JD AdWords, where the business value is really getting created.
Yes. And then if we were stopping here, that would still be a lot of value, because you're pretty much exposing your whole ERP's business logic and making it prettier, taking it out to the user. But what's
So
really
is this the point where if this was like the 30-minute infomercial, I would go, but wait, there's more.
yeah, yeah, just like Steve Jobs used to say, right?
Yeah.
There's one more thing. And one more thing is the multi-cloud, right? And when we talk about a multi-cloud, we mean a unified user experience and a completely integrated orchestrations across the multi-cloud. Not just your JD AdWords, but your Salesforce, your ServiceNow, your proprietary databases, your custom applications that might be sitting on the cloud or on-prem, any other offerings that you might have on a subscription basis as a SaaS or a PaaS, right? All of that we consider as a multi-cloud. Once you integrate that whole thing together in a complete no-code fashion again, if you are an order-to-cash expert, you should be able to build a complete portal of your sales orders, of your quotes, leads, tracking opportunities, and the actual payments, which integrate JD Edwards with Salesforce, with maybe ServiceNow for service tickets, and maybe 5 other systems together into one unified user experience
So
with all
so
the
what
processes
you're
integrated together.
so what you're saying is you can take one business process that today you're having to use, like, say, three different clouds. You got your JD Edwards wherever it's setting, you've got Salesforce, and maybe you've got Shopify, and it's all part of a single business process that you're logging into three different servers. And whatever time your customer service rep or anyone is burning, maintaining kind of those three sessions, copying data synchronization between all those platforms, and you're just pulling that all together.
Yes, and then building on top of it applications for warehouse mobility, for your approval type applications, for digital warehouses and factories, right? For customer, supplier, employee self-service portals, right? And then complete end-to-end automation using not just these workflows and the business logics residing in all these different systems, but also using AI agents to bridge them all together. So that's what we're talking about. And you know what the fun part is? We're not just talking about the theory here, we're going to be actually showing it all to you in the next 30 minutes.
I can't wait to see it.
All right, so are we ready for a demo then?
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's what we're going to cover, right? I'm not sure if we'll be able to cover the whole of it in the next 30 minutes, but I'll try to cover as much. So think of a scenario where you have Salesforce as your CRM, your JD Edwards as your ERP, with your sales order entry applications and configure price quote module that you might want to customize on top of. Think of your work order completions. Think of your maybe a light MES that you have in place or you might want to build. Think of a shipment confirmation once the product is built. So let's say your Salesforce out there on their tablets take an order and they don't have access to Salesforce, they don't have access to JD Edwards. They have a unified experience, like you said. They place the lead, they do the tracking there. There's a quote that gets generated maybe from the back office. They convert and create a quote against an opportunity that goes into your production floor, gets work order gets completed, and that gets shipped out. And then you have this scanner application that does the scan, prints the label, ship it out. From there, let's say the customer receives it, they have some issue with it, they log onto a customer portal, again built on Swift, log in a request that maybe goes into a ServiceNow as a ServiceNow ticket, and then you have a dispatcher portal that dispatches out a technician. The technician is going out with a mobile app, doing the parts entry, doing this, taking e-signature from the customer, and then at that point, while they've created a great experience, trying to upsell and creating a virtuous cycle over and over again. So let's take a look, right? So what I'm going to do here, first of all, let me introduce you to the Swift platform. So this is the Swift platform where all that fun's going to happen. You have different applications you can build, different users you can activate, and different channels. Now here we have JD Edwards as a channel. We can have multiple ERPs as the channel. We also have Salesforce here as a channel, and we also have ServiceNow here.
So you talked about metadata and context before. So if I'm understanding you right, each one of these channels is something where you already know the metadata about, you already know the context, and you're abstracting that for the user. So you can just start working with it. You don't have to understand that underlying table structure, etc.
Yes, exactly. So the whole metadata is available to Swift, and then you can build those applications again without having to understand JSON or REST or how object management works or how user JavaScript works. You have to know nothing of it. All you need to know is the process, what you're trying to achieve here, right? So let's take a look. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to keep switching back between the applications and the designer, right? So that you see how easy it is to even change some of this. So first of all, going back to our demo, I'm going to log in as a salesperson, right? I'm going to have some sales related applications here with me. So I'm going to go into the Swift JD Field Sales app. What that's going to do is it's just opened up this nice looking mobile app, which is connected with both with my Salesforce. So I've got all my contacts from Salesforce coming here. I've got all my accounts coming in from Salesforce. I've got all, and I can create new opportunities right here. What that's going to do is going to create a new opportunity in Salesforce, right? Without me having to go to Salesforce, without me having the access to Salesforce. I can look at all my open leads here, and I can convert. I'll probably make it in the center. So I can even convert an opportunity in a lead into an opportunity right from within Swift. So it's basically, Paul, like you mentioned, right? So it has all the understanding and the context of these objects, right? That are coming from the underlying system. And then I can just manipulate all that, change the status, change the date, do all of those wonderful things. And you know what? Once I'm ready for creating codes, so I can take a look at all my open opportunities. And at that point, I can click on one and click and create a JD code. So now that's going to hit my P4210 as an SQ order type. And as I create the code, it's going to reference this opportunity number and create a cross reference between the two. So very seamlessly, it's going to know that, okay, this code is being created against this opportunity which resides in Salesforce. But for me as a salesperson, I don't need to know all of that. All I need to know is, okay, these are the opportunities I'm working on. I'm going to get a code. I'm going to create a code. I'm going to get all my item numbers from my, P4210, create that, add stuff here, and see how easy it is. Like, you never lose the context. You're never jumping to multiple screens. You're all on the same screen. And then once you do that, once you create a code, you can, convert that code into an actual order, right? So you can do
Before,
right here. Yeah.
I was going to say, before I would have had to have done all that in Salesforce and then somehow copied all of that data, logged into JD Edwards, pasted it, reformatted it a little bit, and to create the SQ.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And now you're just doing it all seamlessly between both of those applications.
Exactly. With both of the systems being aware that there's a cross-reference happening. So the point about compliance and agility both happening together, right? So we're not bypassing any of your security of Salesforce, neither of your JD Edwards. We're not bypassing any of the business logic of either as well. So that was the first part of it, right? Where I quickly converted it. Maybe if I want to take an e-signature, I can quickly go here, add an e-signature control in there. So let me show you how easy it is to even have these applications customized. So what I was looking here was a JD Edwards form, which is based on P4210, right? And then I created a sales order based on that. I converted a sales quote into an order. Maybe at this point, I want to take an e-signature from the customer. So I can simply drag and drop an e-signature control. I can map it directly back to my media object here and publish the change. So just see how quickly that change is going to appear on
So
my application.
is this the point where we have to wait for things to get promoted in OMW and a CNC to build a package and deploy it out, and tomorrow we'll be able to see the change?
No, we're going to be seeing the change right now, right in this call. So imagine the UAT cycles, right? So I just added this e-signature there and you have it appear here. And if I save it, it just goes back directly in real time to my JD Edwards. So no customizations required on your JD Edwards. Everything happening very, very quickly, as you can see, right? If I want to maybe take a picture, right? Maybe I want to take a smiley picture of my customer doing the e-signature. At that point, I can simply, put in a camera control. Again, map the camera control back to my e-signature, to my media object structure in that relevant underlying JD Edwards structure. Go ahead, publish it. I didn't have the camera before. Now, if I come back here, I'm going to start having the camera available here as well. Now I've got a camera. I can open up this camera, take a nice picture. It's all synced up, right? So going back to real time to your JD AdWords coming back, nothing getting cached somewhere else, or you having to worry whether it's all in sync or not. So that was the first part of it, right? The sales
So
force going out there on the
just
tablets or
curious.
phones.
So
Yeah.
will that picture end up in JD Edwards as like a media attachment?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. All right. So that covers our first part of this, right? So where the sales force was going out there, coordinating back and forth with your maybe back office, doing the configure price quote aspect, going ahead, taking the ACH. Now let's assume that order got signed. You can send a push notification right to the scanner on the warehouse or to a mobile app or to the production manager, right? And they're going to be logging into the same application. That's again the beauty of it. Enterprise-wide is one application we're talking about. No worrying about which application to download and whether you're on the latest or greatest version. You're always going to be on the latest and greatest version. All you need to do is log in as that role. So in this case, I'm going to log in, let's say, as the operator on the factory floor, and I need to do the work order completion. So I've got this bunch of applications here. I'm going to do just the work order completion. So maybe I'm producing that order. I need to do the work order completion. So I can simply go ahead, look at the order number. It's going to automatically convert your sales order into a work order or into a manufacturing work order, if you will. And then you can do all of those things, produce it, do an issue. You can have different sort of statuses. All of that is again the same app that was a Salesforce, an app for your sales agents is now an app for your factory floor. You can open it on your Zebra scanners or your Honeywells, or maybe just on the Android tablets, right? Or put them like a kiosk on the factory floor, whichever way you want to do it. Now, once you do that, let's talk about the next step, which is to do a ship confirmation, right? So now maybe the product is ready. I want to do a ship confirmation. So I can come here, right? Simply do a quick ship confirmation. And again, notice how easy all this navigation is. I'm not having to forget what I was trying to do. Everything is right there on the same screen. And maybe at this point, I want to do uh, a label printing, right? So let's go back and let's search out that ship confirmation app. And I want to put a label printer on it. So let me try and do that as we speak here.
So
So
would this be like the Zebra printer, the barcoding stuff?
yes. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to throw in on this confirm ship button. I also want to do a print label. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to enable the ZPL printing. You see that? I'm going to enable that. And one option is I can use a ZPL designer, paste the code here. The other option is, which I prefer, is actually use a ZPL designer, which is built in. So here I could either have a template of my ABC ink, and I might have a label format, or I can create a new one. And I can fully parameterize this and generate a print, right? So when I save it, it's going to actually create the ZPL for me. And I've got all the fields available that I simply inherited from JD Edwards or from other systems that I can just put in here and put in the customer number here, just as a variable, and that's it. The change starts going to reflect here. So if I publish this, come back to my ship confirmation app. So I'm going to close this. And now I'm going to try and do a confirmation on this order. You will start noticing that, just scroll down, you'll start noticing now this button also has the print capability in there. Now these printers could be local printers, they could be remote printers. So if I could be on the field and I want to send out a note where I want to do a label printing within the warehouse. So you could even have those sort of things as well. So imagine how easy that whole process becomes, right? Instead of having to have a label printing solution, and then having a designer separately, and then having a warehouse scanning solution separately, having to integrate that with JD Edwards separately, we are unifying the whole experience altogether.
So I know one of the things a lot of companies struggle with, especially if they have some of the legacy scanning solutions, are just how pricey those devices are every time they need to replace them, they need to do an upgrade. I know a company that was still using something that I think it was Windows Compact Edition. The devices they were running was using that, and I mean, talk about old and ancient and
Yeah.
security nightmare. Um, you said before this could be done like right on an Android phone.
Yeah.
So
So you
so
can
are
then
you using like the camera on the phone?
exactly right. So you can use the default camera of the phone to do the barcode scanning right with your Android or your iPhone or your iPad or your Android tablet, or you can actually install the same thing as an Android app within a Zebra or a Honeywell scanner. Depends on how far the stuff is that you are looking to scan, whether laser gun is going to be better option. By the way, you can also have the third-party uh, dongles that you can attach with your smartphones for laser gun scans as
Oh,
well.
so you're doing this thing.
Yeah, so you kind of yeah, so you kind of kind of creating that kind of superpower right within your phone. So yeah, and then there are a lot of these pre-built apps that we haven't even talked about, where all these different processes like inventory cycle counts or things like those, they all come pre-built. So we have this bunch of pre-built applications on Swift that you can simply take the vanilla version, make sure that they are working with your JD Edwards modules. If not, there are some custom fields you want to adjust or do things differently. You can again go back to the designer like I showed you, how quickly and fast that was to do all of those changes and get going. Now let's talk about from once the customer has received that product, right? You ship the product, the customer received it, maybe there was an issue and they want to open a service ticket. Maybe you want to create a customer service portal, right? And the customer service portal has to be integrated with your service CRM, maybe ServiceNow, and there also needs to have a service order associated with that on your JD Edwards site. So let's take an example for that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to log in and I'm going to switch into more of a desktop mode here. And that's the beauty of it. The same application going to work, the same container going to work like a desktop view. You can download an iOS and an Android version, and everything's going to work in that. But now let's talk a little bit about a customer who maybe doesn't want to install your app, but they just want to go on the web and raise a ticket, right? You have a customer portal. So I'm going to log in as a customer, and I'm going to see what we've got for the customer. So I'm going to open up this customer service portal 2.0. Maybe it's an industrial equipment that I've sent out. And maybe as a customer, I want to see how many of those that I have installed, and I want to maybe have some IoT integrated with my portal just to see what's the overall picture is. Maybe I want to send some nice videos for customers to self-service themselves. And maybe I want to look at some of these tickets, right? What the status is, right? If there are any parts and labor being attached to them, or there are any updates being made to them, or maybe I want to take an e-signature from the customer. Maybe I want to look at what equipment I've got going, which ones are installed, which ones are down, what their service history is like. So just imagine the possibilities of whatever you want to open up to the customers, whatever you're going to keep in house for dispatchers, and then these dispatchers actually dispatching these technicians out. So let's assume one of these work orders, one of these service orders, the higher priority ones, got assigned to a technician. So next, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back into our mobile mode, and I'm going to now log in as a technician. So I'm going to go out, log out as a customer, and now I become a technician. So now as a technician, I should be able to see all the work orders that I need to work on. So I'm going to go to the service work orders application. Here I've got one high priority service that I need to perform, and there are some others that I also need to perform, right? I'm going to go here, open up the list of these orders that have been assigned to me. I can add a Google map to it, maybe driving directions to the customer site. All of those fancy things can be added to it. But let's take a look at this, right? So maybe I also added some sensor data, some IoT data, some other aspects. Maybe as I added some self-help videos, right? So maybe they can self-diagnose. The technician can diagnose, and some some manuals around that equipment. I can even embed a co-pilot within this. So I can literally add a co-pilot within this same screen, so that once, based on the fault error, based on the equipment type, based on whatever, right, I can give guidance to the technician while they're out there. So let me just quickly show that
So
piece.
do you mean like Microsoft Copilot?
Yeah, either Microsoft Copilot, and we have it like we have kind of a concept of bring your own LLM. So for example, let me go back to this service work order screen and add a Copilot. Let's see how that looks. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to open up this service order detail where we were looking at those screens. I'm going to throw in a Copilot on this. Maybe let me throw it right here at the bottom. So now I've thrown the Copilot here, and here what I can do is I can write a dynamic prompt, right, where I can pick values. Let's say I want to pick the fault code or whatever other information from some of the fields, maybe the component item number, right? And based on that, I want to ask, I'm not picking the right fields, but you get the idea, right? I'm basically making a prompt dynamic based on the context of where technician is, what the history of that issue is, and then passing it all to the prompt in the real time to the Copilot so that I can get back the response.
So
Um,
to double click on that for a second, so could we also take company specific information and embed that like retrieval augmented generation or RAG into that? So now you've got the specific knowledge set proprietary to your company, but in Copilot or in OpenAI, or I think you said bring your own
yeah, bring your own
LLM,
LLM. Yeah,
whatever you want it to be.
exactly. And if you have a vector DB that you trained on your sort of historic data, we could embed that in there as well. So that's as easy as this, right? So I don't have the API key set up right now, but yeah, we just set up the API key for the Copilot, bring it all together, and then you're empowering your technician. But what's something that I really want to show you, even from an AI perspective on the designer agent, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But going back to that discussion, right, where I provided a great service. At this point, maybe I find an opportunity for a new service opportunity to upsell. But I was there at the customer site. Maybe they had different equipment. Maybe there was a equipment that I could sell a service contract on. So imagine how, as a technician or service center, a cost center has now converted into a profit center, right?
Profit
Just
center.
because you have that agility into your applications in the process. So I could literally create a new service entry, maybe take a quick e-signature from the customer, and then you have a new order, right?
So,
So
not only are you solving the problem of data silos, you're solving the problem of people silos, enabling one individual to do more things
yeah,
within the company. Often that person that's providing service is that trusted advisor. The customer looks at them as the most trusted individual from your company. If now all of a sudden that individual is able to sell, I mean, that's huge.
yeah,
That could literally move a stock price.
absolutely. So this is the virtuous cycle I'm talking about, right? This leading from the experience is basically when you look at your company from outside in, a lot of these innovation opportunities come up. And if you have a platform that can do it with agility, like a no code and work at a metadata level, that's the magic we are really talking about, right? Now, just to wrap it up, the demo, we have something which I would like to talk about here. You see this Swift agent. This is our designer AI agent. What you can do with this is some amazing stuff. So for example, you have a new idea of what type of application you want to build. Let's say I'm in the industrial manufacturing space and I want to create a service request based on maybe HVAC issues, right? So I could literally come in and create the tab object that represents HVAC maintenance issues. Let's see what the system does. See, it's already recommending me the different data types. So maybe I'll just go with, this is what it's recommending.
So what
Yeah,
you're literally doing here is vibe coding within
yeah.
Swift,
You see
which is
what we're doing
okay.
here? You see the power of this? And then once you have this object, the next command you can give it to it. Like I've done a few before this. So I said, I like how Salesforce opportunity looks like. So create a Salesforce type opportunity tracking object for me. I like how ServiceNow does tickets. So, I would rather have something similar, or maybe a completely different thing. Like here, I told it I want to sell shoes, right? I want to create a catalog based on shoes. So you see how it's got sizes, color, material, which is more pertinent to shoes, for example, right? And at some point, I also gave it like, I want to create a production line for asphalt production. How many objects do you recommend? So when we talk about customizations, Paul, we're not talking about customizations as well in a conventional way on Swift. We're talking about customization in the AI ready way, where you have all of this created, you go ahead, add them as a form. So for example, if I want to, within that sales application we're talking about, I want to add a custom form, and I don't want to do it in a custom way. I want to say, you know what, I've got this product catalog that I just created. Then you go ahead and create a form for me with this. It's gonna go back, understand what fields are there, automatically select the fields, and I've just got this product catalog form ready to go. So that's the power we're talking about with this. With that, I think we can take questions now, unless you have something, Paul, that you want to talk about.
No, no, this was fantastic. So before we get to questions, kind of a call to the audience, the attendees today. What to think about is how this can just fundamentally move the needle for your company in terms of innovation and speed and what you can do. My call to action would be get a demo account set up with this and run an internal hackathon. Bring people from different silos together into the same room and just start whiteboarding on the stuff that you can do. And literally, it's not just the whiteboard. You start building it out there, just like Ollie was doing. And at the end of it, you actually have functioning apps. Ollie, this was absolutely amazing. I am so excited about this product.
And great to partner up, Paul, on this.
So in terms of questions, if anyone has any questions concerning the product, how to implement it, next steps, now's the time to ask. And actually looking at the chat, Ollie, we've got the first one. This is in terms of JD Edwards. They want to know what is the minimum tools that they need to be running on in order to take advantage of all this goodness that you were just showing.
Yeah, the minimum tools release is 9.1.5. That was basically when the AIS version 1 was launched. So it goes back to that 9.1.5. You don't even have to be on 9.2 for it.
And if you're on older than that, we need to talk. You've got
Yeah,
some serious.
there are still options, but yeah,
Yeah.
9.1.5, you're going to start seeing all the magic that you saw me do.
All right. So the next question was, does eFlex Swift have cybersecurity SOX compliance report available?
Yes, we do. So we have SOC 2 Type 2 compliance. We have SOX compliance. We work with multiple industries that are very, very sensitive about security. So in some cases, they've even kept our SOC 2 reports on the side and have grilled us from all angles beyond that as well. So we are very well.
Oh, here's a good one. Do you support DocuSign?
We do, yeah. So we have a way to connect any channel, like any REST channel, and we have DocuSign supported with it as well. So you can, and just not DocuSign, anything that supports a REST API or its database access, you can plug it in and start building stuff in a no-code fashion on that.
Okay, and apparently you've got a fan on the call, because this one says, I can attest that literally only a few hours of training, couple hours of practice, and I was creating mobile apps for JD Edwards immediately. This training included everything, not just look and actions within the app. Training included security, Um, wow, it's like
Yeah,
you
we've got something really nice going called Cert
yeah.
Innovation Hub, where we have all these trainings available, and we have a whole certification program. It's a 2 + 2 hour training, 2 hour of training, 2 hour of actual workshop, and you are pretty much, you can start building apps.
That is so exciting. So if people want to get a hold of you or me, feel free to reach out to either of them. Can you put the slide back up that had our contact information on it, Ali? So go out to our websites, or if you're on LinkedIn, just look me up or look Ali up. We'd love to talk with you and would love an opportunity to collaborate with you on how to innovate for your company. Thank you so much for attending. Ali, thanks for taking time to join us today.
You're welcome, Paul, and it was a pleasure.
All right, see you all later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.